Good morning, everybody. Republican candidate for Wisconsin's 25th state Senate seat, Romaine Quinn, I think the senior in this photo, not junior there, is our very special guest today, Friday, October 28th, 2022. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live. You know what? I just realized I made a mistake on our audio. Well, it doesn't matter. I don't know if anybody can hear any of this music that's playing. I forgot to plug something in. Special thank you to some of our guests so far this month: Eric Toney, Gabe Magnifici, Tom Tiffany, Amy Loudenbeck, Laura Gapsky, Danielle Johnson, Chris Fitzgerald, as well as Aaron Marco and Brian Cole. You can watch a recording of those shows and all of our previous live shows on our website, our Facebook page, or on our YouTube channel. Next week, Sheriff Fitzgerald and I will be back on Tuesday for our latest Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. And on Friday, 1 week from today, we'll be chatting with Republican candidate in Wisconsin's, you got to help me out here on this one, Romaine. I think it's the 30th Assembly District, Shannon Zimmerman. Is it 30th or 29th? It's 30th.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's not in our district or in our coverage area, but I think so. Anyway, today, welcoming back to the show, friend of the show, Republican candidate, Wisconsin's 25th state Senate race, Romaine Quinn. Romaine, good morning. And yeah,
morning.
Looks like there's a little, good morning, Little Maine. Aww.
Little Maine. Yeah, everyone calls him Little Maine. I just wanted to make everyone know that my campaign manager is okay because he fell down and fractured his leg. I made that post on Facebook. And the funny part is people were actually worried about my real campaign manager. So he was getting calls from Madison like, Brian, did you break your leg? It's like, no.
It was, come on.
Little Romaine.
Little Romaine. I love it. I love it.
He just wanted to come on today and let everyone know he's doing all right.
Well, sheepers, he's so big. Last I saw, he was just tiny.
Yep. He's not tiny anymore.
What is little Romaine doing today for the campaign? How's he helping out Dad today?
Well, he's always sporting his Win with Quinn clothes.
I love it.
Yep, he's got his own shirt and sweatshirt.
So
always helping Dad. But he's going to go with Mom now and have some coffee so we can do a show.
You mean Mom's having coffee?
Mom's having coffee. Yeah. Say bye. Bye.
Bye, little Romaine.
Good job.
Aw. That's awesome. So usually, like when we do these, by the way, thanks for coming back on. Usually we do these Absolutely. Meet the Candidates. It's kind of what we call them right now. But you've been on so many times. You were on early this year and a few times last year. You were in the Assembly. Actually, we can kind of get into some of that a little bit, kind of a recap. But I think at this point, everybody knows who you are. So this isn't going to be like our traditional Meet the Candidate kind of episode because I think for the most part, everybody knows you. So we can kind of talk about whatever we want to talk about. But first, for the people who don't know you that well, or maybe just at all, give a recap how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, you bet. So born and raised in Rice Lake, got my start in politics very young. Actually, I totally forgot about this, but it kind of started way back in high school, even before I ran for city council, when Rice Lake was part of Superior Days, which is a lobbying group. The Rice Lake Barron County area now has its own called Heart of the North Days. But I went down in high school with Superior Days to lobby in the Capitol, and I realized how beautiful the building is, and it really sparked my interest on how government works.
In high school?
From there. Yep.
For all these times you've been on, you are our second guest we've ever had on. It was Sheriff Fitzgerald, and you're the second. That was like 4 years ago. I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. They allowed youth to go down there at the time. And so I participated in that. And it's actually funny. So the person that ran in the 73rd in the primary against Angie Sappick, Scott Lestari, he didn't make it to the primary as a Republican. But his mother, Pat, who's a big Democrat, and I enjoy my conversations with her, she's a sweet lady, actually was part of my Superior Days trip when I was in high school. What? So it's so funny that the world really is smaller than it is, because I've now seen Pat quite a bit on the campaign trail at Towns Association meetings, and I make sure to say hi to her, and that even when I win, she'll probably be frustrated. I don't think she's voting for me, but at least she knows who her state senator is.
Well, that'll happen.
Yeah, so from there, then I ran for city council during my senior year in high school. And then I did that for a term, got out, ran for mayor, and I was the mayor of Rice Lake for 2 years. went off to finish school. I was going to college at UW-Barron County at the time before they expanded their programs to 4 years. Went off, finished school, moved back home, was working, and that's when an assembly seat had opened up. And so I ran for the legislature already back in 2014, and I was fortunate enough to be elected. And then every year running after that, we win by more and more and more. And because I think our message resonated with a lot of people, just be honest with people and be straightforward. We're not going to agree on every issue, but they want to know that you care and that you're being honest with them. And so I served in the legislature from 14 to 2020. We got out of that, and I chose not to rerun again. There was no scandal. I chose not to rerun. And we decided to stay home and start a family. And you saw a piece of that just this morning. And I have another little boy on the way in December. So I'm hoping he holds off until after deer season.
Yeah, that's the important thing. I mean,
and the election too. So no early births, hopefully. So.
I remember one of the times that you were on was back when we still had a studio where we had in-person guests. This was pre-COVID. You wanted to come on and we were talking, and that's when you dropped the bomb. It was on a live show that you weren't going to be seeking re-election.
Right.
Yeah, that was, usually, I know these are organic chats and we don't have a script or talk about things that we're going to talk about. Even though you and I have done a lot of these, there is no, okay, now don't bring this up and make sure you bring that's just not what I've ever done and whatever. But, I felt like kind of I should have known that before you came on.
Yeah.
And I'm not running again. I'm like, what? Yeah, that was nuts. So so now you decided, because I remember on that show, kind of like we just talked about now, that you decided not to seek re-election, which most people would consider that a very safe seat in the 75th, especially looking at your track record and how much you're winning by. Dude, you could have just, unless you did something really dumb, you could have had that seat for pretty much as long as you wanted it. And then you decided not to. What's that?
And I said, I was fortunate to have a lot of support, even by both parties.
Right. So you leaving was, okay, what's going on? But it was the start of family, and obviously you have. So what was the decision process there? Okay, we're starting a family. I did it. Nope, now I'm getting back into politics. Why did you decide? I think we covered this the last time you were on, but just kind of as a recap, why did you decide to get back into politics and run for Senate?
Yeah, so I had that opportunity to work locally as a lender with a local bank. And so that's when it kind of prompted, we talked about, do we do another term and then get out? And then this opportunity kind of presented itself. And it's like, well, if we're ever going to take a step back, not saying I wouldn't get into it again someday, but if we're ever going to take a step back, maybe the timing just kind of works out. And so I did that. I started with a local banking institution. Enjoyed that very much, but I still had my real estate license, and I had that for a couple of years. Didn't do a whole lot with it when I was in the legislature, and then that just exploded. Everyone knows the market is just kind of crazy. It's slowing down now, but it was crazy, and so I enjoyed that very much. So actually, I left the bank to do real estate full time, which I still do today. And then in that, obviously, it's still a people's game, right? You're working with people, you're helping people probably make the most important financial decision in their entire lives. And I enjoy that very much. And over the course of that, during COVID and everything that's going on, I looked at everything going on and I just frustrated, right? Frustrated that I no longer could do something about it. So I'm still getting calls from people. I can't get my unemployment. I'm still getting calls from people. I can't, Medicaid sitting on something, or they're not paying something, or saying I don't qualify, or you name it. The DSPS is not issuing my license so I can continue to work. All sorts of that stuff. And I'm still getting calls, and I'm like, I'm not important anymore, right? Like, not that I was important, but I can't do anything for you. Sure. If I'm not in the legislature, I can't work with the departments. I can't call them and say, hey, get off your bums and do something for my constituent in Barron because you've been sitting on his license and you can't go to work. Things like that. And I look at all the stuff the legislature was trying to do and couldn't quite get it done. No working with the governor at all. At this point, I think Governor Evers has not talked to either Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu or Speaker Robin Vos in a year and a half. And I just think that's a total lack of leadership. Whether you get along or not, you're still in positions where you have to at least have conversations. It's just a failure, I think. And so I look at all that. I see what's going on. frustrated that I can't do anything about it. And then on the flip side is every time I see the legislature trying to do something, I felt Janet Bewley was on the wrong side of it. And so I chose, hey, it's now or never. We're going to try this one more time. We might not win. No one's ever won this seat since before I was alive. But I refuse to sit back and
you
not
mean no
do
Republican?
Something. No Republican. Yep.
Oh, sure. I didn't know that, actually.
So it's been 36 years since a Republican has won this state Senate seat that we're running for. Yeah, a long time. So you were probably, what, 4? And
9. I'd have been 9.
In your parents' eye yet.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
yeah, it's been a long time. So it was either pass on it, and then maybe someday we'd look at something if I felt like serving again, or do it now. And so we sat down and we talked, and it's a big commitment to want to run for something.
Yeah.
And that's why I always urge people on both sides, like, you may not like me or my opponent, but don't be mean and appreciate the fact that someone was willing to run, because it can be pretty grueling. So no matter who you
there was no, in your absence or not seeking re-election, Dave Armstrong, now Representative Dave Armstrong, who doesn't even have anyone running against him.
Yeah, that's odd.
That's really odd. Hello, Democrats. What are you doing? I don't know. It's just really weird. First of all, you always want to have somebody run and sacrificial on anything just so we can have.
Yeah.
Anyway, but no, and I think obviously I know how you're going to answer it, but still, why didn't you decide to run against Dave? You could have probably won that seat back in the 75th Assembly.
Yeah, because that's not where the need was, right? So Dave does a phenomenal job.
Yeah,
and I worked with Dave in his capacity as the economic development director while I was in the legislature, and actually leaned on Dave for quite a bit of stuff when I was in there, because he's just an expert on so many areas. So Dave does a phenomenal job. He doesn't get bogged down in the partisan crap. He just does his job. He's a strong advocate, and he's well respected in the legislature. And that's what you would hope, right, from your legislator, is to make sure they're respected by their colleagues. They can actually be effective once they're in the building. And Dave does that.
Yeah, Dave's legit.
There'd be no reason for that. Yeah. The need was the state Senate, not just specifically because of Senator Bewley, but because a lot of the bills we passed, even when I was in, would go to the Senate and die. I think at the time, about 2/3 of every piece of legislation that we passed in the state assembly never made it through the Senate. And that's even with both chambers being Republican, right? So it just shows that there's not this total party unity. Everyone's like, oh, well, you have universal control of the legislature. That doesn't mean anything, because a lot of Republicans don't agree with a lot of other Republicans. And unless you're in the room, in those caucuses, your ideas may not get anywhere, just because your party might be in control of that body of the legislature.
Yeah.
And so when we look at the need, the void of leadership, that's very much in the state Senate.
Sure.
And so that's why we decided to choose to run for this seat and not, for instance, against Dave.
Yeah, so I just want to throw this back up, not to see his comment again, but by the way, Dan Fitzgerald, you got this, Romaine. That car, dude, what? Is that just like when you buy a wallet, it just comes with a picture of a family or something and you just keep it? Is that your car, Dan? Because
it's Dan's car. I think Dan used to have that in parades, if I remember right. Yep, you bet. No,
I would make it my profile picture if I had that car too.
So if you recall, Dan and his wife Bunny are Chris Fitzgerald's parents.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I ran against Dan for mayor when I ran in Rice Lake, and I squeaked out a win that I don't think he expected at the time. And now, obviously, we're on the opposite sides of that, but now Dan is one of my biggest fans, and I sure as heck appreciate his support through all my campaigns going forward after that.
Well,
so kind of
they created Fitzy, so I'll give him a few points just for that. Like, I don't know Dan, but yeah, Fitzy's okay.
No,
he's
good people.
Yeah. So at the time, though, you decided to run for Senate. Janet Bewley. So your opponent is Kelly, but at the time it was Janet Bewley still. It wasn't until if I'm remembering the timeline right, you announced that you were running for Senate, and then it was after that she had announced that she was not going to seek re-election, right?
Yeah, I had every intention to run against Janet.
Yeah. So how much did that change things? I think the last time you were on it, I don't even know if you knew your opponent at that point, or I can't remember. Probably should go back and listen to some of these shows. Sure. So how much did that change things for you when it was Janet And now then she wasn't seeking re-election, and now you have somebody that you're like, who's this person? So you have to kind of get to know him. Because that's the nice thing about running against Janet. In your case, she was the senator in, your assembly or in the Senate district. The 75th was in that. Yep. So you know her. You see her in Madison. You know all about her. So you know where to kind of go after her, or what separates you from her, etc.
Oh yeah.
Was it a big challenge? What?
I was ready to run against her.
Yeah.
Again, I like Janet as a person. She's very pleasant to be around. Just on policy, we just didn't agree on a lot of stuff. Or not just that, but how we each chose to conduct ourselves and run our offices, I think was much different. And we just had a different philosophy on how we did that. So I had every intention of doing that. I announced early on because I didn't even know what the new map was like. Because we hear all this time, Republicans drawing maps to be advantageous to their party. So I announced before I even knew what the map was, because I'm like, I don't want them to say, you're only running because you got the map you wanted, or that's the only reason you're going to win, stuff like that. So if you recall, when I announced I was running, and then Governor Evers introduced his map and drew me out of the seat. So if you lived in Cameron, you're part of a seat that like goes to Eau Claire and La Crosse. If you were in Rice Lake, you were part of a seat that went to Hudson. And if you lived in Hagen, you were part of the old seat that went to Superior. And that was the first time in, I think, 40 years Barron County's ever been broken up. And I would argue it was intentional to keep me out of the seat. And luckily the courts threw that out, because Governor Evers' map was even worse.
That was pretty bad.
What people claim the Republicans' map was.
Yeah.
Even his own party, many of them voted against it.
Yeah.
But fast forward, we have the map we're in now. We're always running full steam ahead, regardless of what the district looked like, as long as I was in it. And then here we are today. So I think from any political observer or consultant will tell you that incumbency is powerful, right?
Yeah.
Because what we do as candidates is we try to raise our name ID over the course of the campaign. We might not agree on every issue with the public, things like that, but the public doesn't always know enough about every single candidate. So when they go in the ballot box, they may end up voting for someone just that they heard of, or that the name that they recognize. Or maybe we did meet each other at a meeting one time over the course of my time in the legislature. So I think the Democrats tried very hard to convince Janet to stay in the game, to please run again, because I think she was their best chance at keeping the seat. Now, at the same time, if you had someone like immensely qualified, dynamic, a new candidate that came in that fit the district very well, I think that person without a voting record might have a better opportunity to win this seat. I just don't view Kelly as that candidate. So we were watching very closely to see if someone was going to run out of Superior, that was, immensely qualified in certain areas, or something that would benefit the legislature. That's what we were watching. But then that never showed. So here we are. We're running, like I said, full steam ahead, and we'll see what happens. We still have never won this seat before, but we're going to do our best. You
mentioned Superior. That's what I believe, like most people that I talk to, I don't mean like, my neighbor. I mean, people that are running campaigns or in politics in all across the state, they're all well aware of the 25th Senate race, obviously, for a number of reasons that if you don't know why, okay.
Yep.
And they, back then when it was who's going to run against you, when Janet dropped out, it was if it's someone from Superior, it would hurt you, which led to Romaine is going to do fine in, obviously in Barron and in most of this part down here, but really it's that he's got to get up to Superior and be up there. So if he has a chance at winning, it's not just, which is important, but not just money, not just endorsements, not all the, it's who's your opponent and where they're from. And if it's from, if they were from Superior, that's like your one quote unquote weak spot there in terms of just name ID, as you were talking about. And if they already had that name ID in Superior, that would present a challenge. So not having that person from Superior kind of, I wouldn't say helps, but it's okay. I still got to get my name ID up there. And speaking of that, have you been able to? Do you spend a lot of time up there?
Big time. And anyone that drives through Superior sees our signs. We get compliments all the time. Actually, I was just in Price County yesterday morning at a board of directors meeting with their electric co-op, and Dick Osmond was there, who's running for Congress against Tom Tiffany. And he said, I have to say, I think you have more sign presence out of any candidate running right now, including himself, who's running for Congress. And I'm very fortunate. I've been blessed with a lot of support. in Superior, the Douglas County Republican Party, and others flocking to our campaign because they realize like this, that we are their one real shot, not flipping it because we want a Republican in there, but flipping it for the right reasons, actually having a voice down in Madison, which they just felt they haven't had for quite some time. So we've got a lot of great sign coverage, a lot of support in Superior. At the end of the day, we may not win the city completely, but we're going to get darn close. And that's definitely going to help. But you're right. If there was someone that was a known commodity, that was well-versed in the community, that's been active and had deep family roots there for generations like we do down here, that would make it a tough go because you tend to vote for people you know, right?
Yeah.
And it's just hard getting your name out there in such a big district. We're the largest geographical district in the state.
Really? I'm just trying to picture that.
Yeah. So remember, it goes from here to Superior. And of course, it grabs Burnett County and Washburn County on the way up. And then it goes all the way over to Hurley. And then down into Price County. And so it touches both states, Minnesota and Michigan. And it goes as far south as Barron County and as far south as Price County on the east end. So
you're used to running, obviously Assembly. Most people know that a Senate district is made up of 3 Assembly districts. You were in the Assembly, so it's a third of the size of the district you had before. Obviously, for parades, kissing babies and whatever it is that politicians do on campaigns. Now it's much larger. Is that, I'm assuming that's one of, and what else has it been different this time around? You're used to running for Assembly. Now you're running for Senate outside of just the geographical area that you have to go to all these things now. What else is different going into this? Like something I didn't realize it was going to be X when I started this race for Senate, but wow, I've discovered this. What are some of those things?
Gosh, yeah, the geography is big, and we knew it would be, quite a bit bigger, and we'd have to spend our time in a lot of other areas. But it is pretty significant, right? So we went from, I think, a lot of parades in the Assembly, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10 in a given year to, twice that, and we just can't be everywhere, right? So whether we're getting rained on and it's 50 degrees in Superior on their July 4th parade, or then we jotted over to Lake Nebegamin, and then we go to do the Ogama's Christmas Tree Festival parade. That was just within the last month. So it's been a lot of fun because for how different this district is, a lot of it's still the same because we are dotted with a lot of small, unique communities that have a rich history, a cool story that dot northern Wisconsin. So I always say we have the best district in the state because we do. And
because we're in it. I mean, duh.
Yeah.
Where we live is the best district.
We just have a lot of unique stories and unique history across northern Wisconsin.
When you go to these different areas, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot different between northwestern Barron County, let's say Cumberland, versus Shell Lake. Not a lot different, but there could be a lot that is different between a Cameron and Superior. So when you go up to Superior, do you see their needs are different than our needs? Are there big things that are happening there that you're like, wow, that's not, even though it's just right there, it's still wildly different needs and interests than we have down in the southern part of the 25th district?
So it is different. It's a combination of things, though, right? So at the end of the day, we still have a lack of housing across this district, and that's in Rice Lake and it's in Superior. There's concerns about schools, our schools, school funding, and those kinds of issues. Broadband expansion, not so much as much in the city of Superior. I think there's some struggles there because I heard the city wanted to start their own network. So those kinds of issues resonate across the district no matter where you are. But there are unique needs too, which I saw as a perfect example. At the end of the day, no matter where you are in the seat, you want leadership that's effective. You want to be heard because if you're north of Highway 29, you feel Madison ignores you and doesn't care about your issues and needs. And so when I looked at Superior, a unique issue was they wanted to pass a bill called the Expo District Bill to create an Expo District to capture some of the tourism and economic development that would spill off from Duluth to be able to host some of these events in Superior, right? Nice. No brainer. And so pointing back to having effective representation is they tried for 8 years to get that bill done and with no luck. I remember they came to me in 2018 and said, Romaine, this bill is super important for Superior. It's going to be the greatest economic development tool in probably a generation. And would you help us do it? And I said, yes. So we signed on to the bill. But the sad part is I never heard about that bill the first 4 years I was in office. So tell me your representative's doing your job when I'm your colleague and I didn't even know that this bill was floating around for 4 years, and it's the biggest thing that you can do for your district. So tell me that they were being represented. And I would argue they weren't. And so that's just one of many issues we hear. When I'm in Price County and I'm going through Park Falls, their mill just closed. They had that paper mill for over 100 years in that community, and it just closed. And there was a bill on the table, and they couldn't get it done. It was vetoed by the governor. And then they couldn't get consensus on how to fix it going forward. There was a plan in place to retool the mill, to make it viable, to keep it open. And no, it's closed now. And to rub salt in the wound, there's a Chinese company, Bitcoin mining, in the site of the old Park Falls mill, which literally built that community. So talk about a slap in the face on multiple fronts. And that doesn't need to happen. And that should never happen if you have legislators in Madison that can convey your message to their colleagues to make sure that you're not forgotten, your priorities still matter. So that's what I'm hearing across the district, no matter what part you're in.
You had brought up, excuse me, parenting, and there was, and there I think kind of still is, I don't know what race it is, but they're talking about this a lot, and some race up in here in North Wisconsin, but it's been on a lot of news. It was regarding parenting in school. That's what it was. You're bringing up schools. I wrote down parenting about teachers. It was regarding the LGBTQIA plus the child. What is it that they wouldn't have to notify the parents of different pronouns or something along those lines? If I'm getting that correct, I think even like Will sue like Eau Claire School District for it, etc. Where there's been obviously this is a polarizing thing, and this isn't about. I mean, it is, but the question isn't specifically LGBTQI plus. It is, do you think this is something, is this a parenting issue? Is this a Republican versus Democrat issue? Is this an equality issue? What is this?
Well, I first want to start out by saying that my competition has accused me of basically hating the LGBTQ community, which is just completely incorrect, right? I think everyone, no matter your circumstance, no matter who you are, no matter how you choose to live your life, you deserve the same amount of respect as anybody else, even if we disagree on policy or whatever it may be, right? So I don't hate anybody. So I just wanted to spell that right out of the gate. But this particular issue, when we talked about in Rice Lake, is that it was happening in Eau Claire, which I think this stemmed from, to make sure it never happens in Rice Lake, is that there were staff in the Eau Claire School District, there were emails specifically saying, do not tell parents that we are calling their children by different pronouns or different names. So if your child is coming out as transgender and they want to be addressed as a different name or a different gender in the school district, staff were instructed in Eau Claire not to tell the mom and dad. I think that is terribly wrong and deceitful. I think that turns the relationship between parents, students, and schools on its head. Our children are not wards of the state. They're not owned by the school. They are the owner. They're under the ownership until they're 18, even by state law, of their parents. And so I think that's absurd to me. And so in Rice Lake, there were concerns about curriculum and this potentially happening. And so the board just recently passed a new policy saying that if your child would like to be called by a different pronoun in school and a different name, that's fine. But parents have to be notified, and please sign off on that. So if you started in this district and we have your birth certificate and we've always known your child as X, Y, and Z, and you want to change that, the parent has to sign off on that. I think most people would view that as common sense.
It is, and that's just it. It's nothing against anyone else. You know me, you know my faith, right? And just what all of my views and opinions stem from, what does the only authority in my life, the Bible, tell me? But there's a lot of things that, it doesn't specifically address. So those are kind of like gray areas there. But that's just my faith, my belief. That's what I think for this house, this family. But as far as the other stuff, yeah, that's fine. I don't care. Do what you want. Great. I want everyone to be happy and safe and feel comfortable in life and whatever. But that one is, even we're talking about here amongst the kids, and, Kenneth and Riley, they're just 13 and 14, but very precocious, and they have big brains, and I like it when they use them. And they even said, yeah, but you pretty much know everything that goes on with us at school anyway. I'm like, yeah, pretty much, because I do. I like to keep involved with them. And I know there are a lot of parents that maybe aren't, and I don't know what to tell you, but still, I feel like that's a big one. And I asked them, okay, you're grown up and you have kids. Would you want to know? Like, yeah. So for me, it was just kind of the same thing too. It just feels like, what? What else aren't you telling me? And I feel like I should know as a parent, or at least be notified. Whether I would care or not's irrelevant.
Right.
But I kind of feel like you should probably let someone know. I mean, they'll let us know if, one of the kids has missed their homework twice in a row. You get an email for that? I kind of feel like that's a big one. You may want to let me know.
Right. And I would argue it's not even an issue about faith, right? Or religion or your views
It
on.
It is 100% not. That was my point. It has nothing to do with that.
No. It's your right as a parent to know what's going on with your child in a school setting.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of many defining issues that separates myself from my competition. While I was in the meeting encouraging the board privately to pass this, because I think it's common sense, my competition was out on Wisconsin Avenue protesting the board's decision before the meeting. So I don't think you could have two starker realities running for office on that issue for your state Senate. And it should be that way. I don't think it's a partisan issue.
Well, everything's a partisan issue. Come on. It's an election cycle. So it has to be.
Yeah. Right. It shouldn't be, though.
So you said that your opponent went after you for being, anti, right? I'm trying to find this real quickly because some stuff came in the mail and I can't remember what it was from. And I was wondering, does that stuff really even work? That stuff.
And there's a ton of negativity in this race.
Yeah. And so I want to know this. What kind of negative ads are you running against your opponent?
So there's a big difference between, well, first, none. We have not mentioned her at all. Except on your show. And there's a difference between running negative ads and explaining the differences between you and your opponent on policy.
Isn't that called a contrast ad? Right.
You could argue that. And then some will say that's negative, right? But there's also a difference between third-party groups that we can't work with.
Yeah, those are wildly different. I always look to see who is this paid for by. If it doesn't say Quinn right on there, then okay, whatever. Like if AFP is sending out a whole bunch of things, okay, got it.
Right. So we have chosen to not do any of that. I don't think we need to. And I get probably 2 or 3 emails a week saying, "Oh, we love your TV commercial. It's the only thing that doesn't crap on your opponent on all of cable right now. And we appreciate it's refreshing." Right. And so we have not done any mailers. We don't do any digital.
In terms of negative
TV commercials and even radio commercials. I don't think we need to do that. I think we can starkly show that we have a different background, a different way we approach issues, and we're just different on a lot of policy issues, from Enbridge Line 5, parental rights in schools, who's supporting our campaign. I have the Farm Bureau, the Realtors, the Dairy Business Association, others like that. And then she has our Wisconsin Revolution, which is an arm of the defund the police movement, which I think is radically different than what our district wants to see. So I don't think we have to run ads. I think our differences in policy positions speak for themselves on the campaign trail.
You just mentioned Enbridge Line 5. I'm not sure if that's the one, because Tom Tiffany comes on the show once a month because he's our 7th Congressional District representative. So if it's a Democrat, they could come on every month too. I don't care. And then I think that may be the one that he brings up. And I don't really understand what it all is, but he's talked about it on so many shows. If this is the one that he's talking about. No, I think maybe it's is there a Keystone Pipeline? No. Something. I don't know if that's the same one, but he's brought it up so many times, and I feel like it's too late for me to say, I don't know what you're talking about. So I just sure. Yeah, that's a big topic. I don't really know. So I'm not going to let that happen again. What is Enbridge Line 5?
Yes, so Tom does talk about this quite a bit. I was just with Tom last night at a Burnett County Towns Association meeting, and he brought this up as well. So we know right now that the world is in a global energy crunch. Yep. We have our president begging the Saudis to pump more oil. Gas was just topping $4 a gallon again recently. Diesel is expensive. Propane is expensive. Heating oil is expensive. We just heard an article last night in the Northeast. They're going to start rationing heating oil. We're not even in the dead of winter yet, and they're talking about rationing heating oil. Thinking about that. Not many of us use actual heating oil anymore. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of older homes in Rice Lake that still have the barrels in the basement, but many people don't. So at a time when we can talk about transitions to renewables, I'm not opposed to that. My wife and I, we've been working with Next Gen Energy Solutions out of Shell Lake, getting quotes on solar, because I like the idea that the independence of it, being able to reduce my energy bill if it makes sense. It's an investment. But the point is, we can't be naive to think we can just flip the switch, literally, and make that transition, right? So in the meantime, we have to know that the fossil fuels that we do use, even while we're transitioning, are there, they're reliable, they're affordable, and they're safe. And statistically across the board, pipelines are the most efficient and safest way to move petroleum. Because if they're not going through a pipeline, it's on a truck going across our roads, or it's on a rail, which our rail systems are already congested. And so the most efficient way to move the fuels we all use is through a pipeline. So right now, Enbridge Line 5 runs from Superior all the way through Wisconsin, through the Mackinac Strait, and then I think it terminates in Toledo, Ohio. And so it moves 545,000 barrels of fuel a day. And so if you suddenly take that offline, because right now they have to reroute, there's 43 miles they have to reroute around the Bad River tribe. The tribe said, we don't want this pipeline on our land anymore. So Enbridge said, that's fine. They're rerouting around the tribe. Mm-hmm. And they already have all permission from the landowner and the easement's ready. And Governor Evers hasn't approved that permit. And I honestly think he's waiting to see how the election turns out.
Wait, hold on a second. So like that's what's all of this? Because now I think about it, I recall it's been a while. It was in a while ago. I'd be driving to Eau Claire and I would see a sign that said, say no to, and I'm pretty sure it was about this. Like, so it must have been something come up. So this, okay. So that's interesting. I'm starting to all of a sudden remember a whole bunch of these signs that I saw, or maybe it was like, hey, it's fine. Sure. Or no, it's terrible. Yep. The governor is the one that has to sign a permit for this to happen.
It's through his Department of Natural Resources, which he directly has his thumb on. So right now, to my understanding, is that Enbridge has complied with everything through the permitting process. And of course, they go above and beyond to dot their I's and cross their T's because they know this can be controversial. And he is still not issuing that permit because I don't think he wants to say no before the election. And I don't think he wants to say yes before the election because his base doesn't want the pipeline, right? But this shouldn't be, which I want to reiterate, this shouldn't be a base issue, right? We need fuels today. I'm spending twice as much this year to heat my home. Mm-hmm. The answer is not just weatherization. I think my competition says that, we need to invest more in weatherization. My home is 1,700 square feet. It's pretty efficient. And I can button it up all I want, but the point is I'm still paying twice as much for propane. And I'm not going to burn that much less by sealing my home up a little bit, which is already efficient. And so we have to have reliable, affordable energy for our families, for our homes, our seniors. I feel terrible for the grandma and grandpas who are out there living in the woods yet, who have to fill their propane tank this year when they're already on a month-to-month budget. Where do you find that money? And that part, it makes me sad because you still have to heat your home. Yeah. And so during the middle of all this, we see what's going on in Ukraine with Russia and the horrible situation over there. We see the Europeans struggling, with energy prices now too. During the middle of all of this, the last thing you want to do is shut off an existing pipeline. It's just absurd to me. And so I think we can just apply some common sense as we do see transitions to more renewables to not shoot yourself in the foot on the way. And I think people want a little bit more common sense from their elected officials in Madison.
How many barrels a day do you say that pipeline pipes?
545,000 barrels flow through that pipeline.
I'm just a day.
A day. Yep.
I'm just wondering how many of those barrels, if that wasn't around, and we have a question here from Sherry, actually two, but one that's on this topic about pipeline thing. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah. Oh, there's a button on your screen somewhere that says comments or chat or I don't know, somewhere, and I'll put it up on the screen in a second. But 540,000. How many does a truck? That's how many barrels can they hold? And then divide that all out. What I would like to know is how many semis a day would have to be used to do 545,000 barrels, and then start thinking about right. Those things aren't electric trucks. Right. That's a lot. That's a lot of, other stuff that we don't want in the environment. And then here is the question from Sherry. Do you know how many pipelines have leaked and how much Enbridge was fined in that's Minnesota. Sorry. Unless you happen to know Minnesota information.
That I don't. But back to your question, Ben, I think it's somewhere around 2,000 trucks a day. So one, we don't have the drivers. We don't have the capacity to do that. And Highway 2 in Ashland County does not have the ability to withstand that kind of an impact. So at the end of the day, we have to remember that, let's say we don't want the line, we don't want to reroute, we want it to shut down.
Fine.
We're still going to use the energy, right? So it's still got to get there some way. So it's going to be on rail or it's going to be on truck. And statistically, even though, yes, do pipelines leak on occasion? Yes. But it's still safer statistically than having it on rail or having it on your freeways. And so at the end of the day, whether it's safety, whether it's reliability, whether it's efficiency, whether it's affordability, it's all makes sense to still focus on the pipeline. And the big part is that line, I think, is like 60 years old. Why would you not want to take a 60-year-old pipeline out of the ground and put in the newest, greatest technology that we have today to make it as safe as it can be? And that's not even talking about the economic impact, right? 700 union jobs, hundreds of millions of dollars in investment into the Ashland, Price County, northern Wisconsin area as they reroute. Sure. And I think that's just huge. I have a lot of friends that lay pipeline for a living. They're middle class, upper middle class jobs, guys sometimes with no education, and they are living the American dream by making sure that we have safe and reliable energy.
Laying pipe. The other question from Sherry was, do you support hiring social workers and law enforcement to deal with mental health crises to reduce violence?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Barron County is really a model on how they handle those already. So I think they meet on a quarterly basis. If I remember, I used to attend some of their meetings between Chris Fitzgerald, Stacy Frolick at Health and Human Services, and others to try to say, hey, on situations, it might make more sense for the social worker to go in first before the police bust the door down, or vice versa, to try and diffuse a situation and have a better outcome and not put all this pressure just on our law enforcement, right? Because our law enforcement men and women, just like teachers today, they have to be psychologists, they have to be social workers, they have to be all these other things that their jobs were not initially meant to be for. So I'm absolutely for that. But it's important to remember that people that do call for that, there's a difference between finding new monies, adding social workers, and supporting our police versus cutting our police departments.
There you go.
To hire more social workers. Big difference.
Yeah. I'm a huge supporter of hiring social workers and law enforcement to deal with mental health crises to reduce violence. But not at the expense of taking the money from law enforcement. 100%. And that's kind of where people are getting around the whole, well, I'm not really defunding the police. It's not really that. I'm like, really though? Because you are. Like, if we want to get that somewhere else, go right ahead. But that kind of defeats the purpose because they're already underfunded. Even though their budgets are large in most counties and municipalities, there's a heavy financial burden. They literally call it a burden. You know, any expense is considered a burden. But that's great. But also, social workers out at scenes and stuff. I've seen some people talk about that. Yeah, maybe not necessarily. And that could be dangerous because we also don't want social workers having to be like cops.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So we're up against our time already. The time has already flown by. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Oh, gosh. I mean, we could be on here for hours, right? All the issues that we hear about, like I mentioned.
Yeah, we've only gotten to like a few just randomly coming up. So.
Right. You bet. I think at the end of the day, my pitch to voters always has been, you know who I am. We may not agree on everything, but I'll be honest with you in Madison, and I'm going to be and put myself in positions to be effective as I possibly can be. At the end of the day, you can maybe elect someone that agrees with you 100% of the time, but if they can't get anything done, what's the point? And so I think for far too long, whether it's investments in infrastructure, whether it's just making sure our voices are heard on policy items, northern Wisconsin has been ignored for too long. And I think I've shown that I have the track record to be effective. I was on our leadership team. I was on like 8 different committees at one point, putting the time in to make sure that we actually had a voice at the table. And I think that was lacking in the Senate. And I think we can replicate what we've already done in the Assembly and bring that to the upper house in the legislature and do that once again. So reach out anytime. We got a lot of days left, a whole 11 days left for the election. If people do have questions between now and voting, please reach out. We're on the doors every day. We're attending meetings every day from now to the end, just trying to reach as many voters as we can. I think we're on track to knock 30,000 doors this election all across the district. We've been in communities, I think, everywhere twice now. Park Falls, Ashland, Phillips, Mellon, Shell Lake, Spooner. We're going back to Cumberland today to finish up. We've been through Ashland 3 times. So we're trying to get everywhere we can. So there's no hiding who I am, right? I'm trying to get out in front of the people as early as I can before the election so they know what they get when they go to the ballot box.
It's funny you brought that up because my wife, Drusha, kind of brought that up too, is, like when you're talking about if you're running for an office and you can just say, I'm going to do this and I believe this and I do all this, but you're saying that, but unless you can actually, be effective and get things done. It doesn't matter what you say. And Georgia seemed to kind of ache in that too, like when I was courting her. Ah, boy, when I'm your husband, I'm going to do this and all this. And then all of a sudden I get the job. And it's,
Did you overpromise, Ben?
Yeah, maybe. That's kind of where I was going with it a little bit. Yeah,
well, I don't make promises. I promise to do. I always promise that I will do the best I possibly can to represent you. That's what I promise.
Where can people go to find out more information about you?
Just RomaineQuinn.com.
Oh, that's
I try to put a lot of issues on there too. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I have to clarify. Up north, I get a lot of flack because my signs have a lot of blue. So people think I'm trying to deceive people. I'm not. I am running as a Republican. I'm not hiding that. I get emails like once a week.
Oh,
you're lying to people. Your signs are blue. Yeah. Well, my signs have been blue since I was 24. It's been the same thing the whole time. So I'm not trying to deceive people.
I didn't think about that.
Just because my favorite color is blue. Sorry.
Isn't it red in there too? Blue? No.
Yeah, the red check mark.
That okay. Yep. Yeah, because I do see those the things that you sent, or I think your campaign does, because they're all positive things and it's about you. So I wouldn't imagine that your opponent would be sending really, really nice positive things about you in the mail to us. So oh man, I forgot. Oh, you know what? I don't know if I'll so I do these predictions for the elections. So I pick 10 races in our area and a few from the state. And I announce them on our Positive Tuesday Ben and Fitzy show. It'll be on election days when I'll announce them. But next Tuesday, I'll probably give like the first few. So I can announce today my first one, a little tease. And now you're on that list too, but we can't get into that right now. So here's how it works. So this is just a quick screenshot of a spreadsheet. So there's points that are involved. So on the left-hand side there, you'll see the races, Assembly 28, 70, blah, 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 Dick Osman, Tom Tiffany, the U.S. Senate race, Attorney General's race, and Governor's race. And the A's, of course, are Assembly, S are the Senate, and those are in our area, Northwest Wisconsin. So it's not just about predicting the winner. It's also you have to assign a point value to it. So the number 10 is the one you are the most confident, because when you're finished, you want to have the most points, and we have a whole bunch of people do this. So
got it.
Right. So if you lose your number 1 and number 2, which is like the least confident that they're going to win, that's 2 that you lost. But if you only lost 1, it was your number 4. Well, actually, you did better. So, Tom Tiffany, what do you think? That's my first prediction, is in the most confident I have in one candidate winning of the list on the left is Tom Tiffany. What do you think?
Well, I was hoping you'd pick me, but no, you're right. It's definitely Tom.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this isn't like personal, like because Tom comes on the show or something. It's nothing to do with that. It's you look at the previous elections, etc., and it's like, holy cow, that should be. And of course, in that race, the money that was when it didn't raise anything. Super nice guy. I like the guy. He's been on the show, but he's got zero chance in winning.
Yeah, I think the biggest bet on the Tiffany race is if he's going to win by 25 points or 35 points.
Yeah, will he win more than he probably will win more than Tricia Zunker last time, and he ran twice in that same year. And I think the second time he won more, it was like 61-39 probably, I think, in the fall election. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. And I don't know if you can talk about it, but no kidding. So again, we keep working through all of these. And the bottom 4 are going to be the toughest, the least confidence. And I'm not joking. One that I think is going to end up in my least confident, I can't pick the 73rd Assembly District. Gapsky and Sapek. Not kidding. Like, I have no feeling on that one whatsoever.
Sure.
I'm struggling with that one.
Unfortunately, that race has gotten fairly ugly. But I think at the end of the day, northern Wisconsin is trending even further to the right. People are frustrated. They see what's happening in D.C., and no matter how ugly that gets, I think Angie's going to squeak it out.
That's going to be a close one.
It will be. It'll be close, absolutely. But I think she'll still squeak it out.
Oh, yeah. Do you know, the one I don't know anything about is the 29th Senate.
Oh, yep.
And that covers like Sawyer and Rusk. And obviously, what's his name is not seeking re-election.
Right. Yep, Senator Petrowski's retiring.
Petrowski, right. So I don't know either the B. Look and Tom Zach. I don't know anything about either of them. So that's like the one I have to research a little bit. Do you know, obviously, the Republican, you must. Who is that person?
Well, I can tell you. So we have to drive through that district to get to the other side of my district, right? Because I don't have Russ
Oh,
County.
right.
I only have a tip of Sawyer County.
Yeah.
So when I go through Hayward, I go through Ladysmith. As I'm heading to Price County, I didn't even know who Corey Tomczak's opponent was. I didn't see one sign.
I had to look it up this morning.
Yeah, I think his name's Bob.
Bob, okay.
Bob Look, maybe. I think I saw 1 yard sign in Ladysmith. Otherwise, I'm like, I didn't even know he had an opponent. I met him. Very nice guy. So he's going to be a freshman, brand new. I'll be brand new in the Senate. We have bordering districts. I look forward to working with him. But yeah, I didn't even know he had an opponent until like 2 weeks ago. So
yeah, my list, I had that list from a while ago, and it was just this morning I realized I didn't put anybody in the Democrat column. And I'm like, wait, I should double check, see if there was anyone. So I didn't even know who it was until this morning either. It doesn't mean the person can't win, of course, but I just don't know anything about that race. I don't know what either of the guys, they both could be standing right here, and I wouldn't even know them from anybody.
You haven't had Corey on your show?
What?
You haven't had Tomczak on your show?
No. I don't know anything about the guy.
Right. And it's so late in the year now to get more guests on. And I would say like Gay's race too. I think that's got to be number 9 or number 8.
That one's up there quite a bit. And again, I like Patty a lot. I always have. She's a good friend. She's been on the show a lot. And so is Gay. She's a sweetheart. But again, this isn't about who I like. It's like the person. And I know the district realignment probably didn't help Gay a ton. I don't know how much it will hurt, but you look at I feel like that's a pretty strong one there. Borderline lock.
And it's going to be a blowout.
Yeah, I think Edming as well. He's going to be up there.
Jimmy Boy, I love that guy. Yeah. He owns the gas station over in Glen Flora, and he is just a great human being. He does a great job for his district.
Yeah, who do you think is the 3 outside of our assembly area? Senate? Does Ron Johnson get a 3rd term? You're going to say yes to all these Republicans. What am I asking you for? Josh Call and Eric Toney?
I think, well, even traditionally, Republican candidates have done a little bit better in attorney general races in the top of the ticket because I think people view that as the top cop and they want someone a little harder on crime. And I think, it couldn't be more clear that Eric Toney is hands down more qualified, especially when you add in Josh Call's own record being in office. So for me, I think Eric Toney should actually win by more than the rest of the top of the tickets based on the race. But I don't think it'll be that. I think Ron Johnson today wins handily. I think Tim Michaels wins, but it's going to be very, very close. And I think Eric Toney's race is going to be very, very close as well.
Yeah, I got a mailer yesterday that was from Josh Call, or his campaign, I should say. And it was a picture of a sheriff. I don't know what county, not around here. It's saying that, he's my guy and, he's the one I want. And I'm like, who in the world is this idiot?
Yeah, there's
there's nobody that's endorsing Josh Call. Ask any cop or district attorney, or they're like, no, it doesn't even matter. Because first of all, I don't think they should be Republican or Democrats anyway. I don't think that should be a partisan race. No. I know it has to be, but it shouldn't be. My goodness, Josh Call is no thank you.
I don't even know why he wants to run when his entire industry, not industry, but his entire, I don't know, what do you call them? The people that work in his profession don't like him.
I know.
Like, why would you want to go to work every day when everyone doesn't like you?
See, Ben, your politics are showing. And this is what's going to end up. Now, obviously, he's joking there, but I'm looking at this, and I had to remove that. You could make an argument that of these 10 races, that could be a full Republican clean sweep. You could make that argument. And that's weird.
And in your defense, Ben, if we were in southeastern Wisconsin and had a list of 10 races, it wouldn't be that easy to pick. There's a lot of close races down there. I just think northern Wisconsin still trending to the right, very rural, and it makes predicting pretty easy.
It does make it a little easier.
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, man. Hey, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure. So, best of luck to
11 days away. Make sure we all vote.
Yeah, buddy. All righty. Special thank you to our guest for coming on for a chat today. Republican candidate, Wisconsin's 25th state Senate race, Romaine Quinn. Next week, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back on Tuesday for our latest Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. And then on Friday, 1 week from today, we'll be chatting with Republican candidate in Wisconsin. I think we've agreed it's the 30th Assembly District, Shannon Zimmerman. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.